Good morning. Thanks, Pam, for the music. Welcome to our indoor-outdoor service. Let's begin with announcements. If anybody has any announcements, just raise your hand and the mic will be brought to you. We've got Virgin over there. In the meantime, let me just remind you of a few things. Script sales take place after the service at the Welcome Center. If you haven't had your blood pressure checked for a while, hopefully the service doesn't raise your blood pressure, but Aaron, are you in the library today? Okay, Aaron will be happy to check your blood pressure in the library today. That's something we do once a month. Or if you haven't been to the library for a while, maybe stop in and check out a book, and maybe that will help your blood pressure. So, okay, Virgin.
July has arrived, and under your mailboxes are the large print July daily breads. Help yourself. July also has brought magazines to our library. There is Clubhouse Junior for 4 to 7-year-olds, Clubhouse for 8 to 12-year-olds, and Nature Club is even good for grandparents. They're wonderful. Come and check them out. And if you've never seen Plain Values, that is also coming to our library. And so after church, come and check out books, and there's treats there for people who check out books. Oh. And Elijah found out this morning. He was the only one that came before church.
Excellent. There you go. So it sounds like the library has something for all ages. If you're not into books, there will be magazines and plenty of resources in the library. So stop by. So next Sunday, Brandon, go ahead.
This is Brandon King. As you may have seen in the bulletin over the past few weeks, there's been an announcement about the upcoming MCC bike ride that me and my friend Ethan Hurst are planning this year. This year we're going down south to Columbus area. We're actually starting in London, Ohio, riding north to Columbus on Saturday. This is in 2 weeks. And then riding south to Wilberforce on Sunday with camping in between. I haven't done a real good job of communicating this this year, but I will have Chip send out, there's a donation link to MCC that I'll have Chip send out this week. We're raising funds for MCC Peace Projects this year. Also, if you would like to donate towards the ride, you can do that through the offering by putting a memo to MCC Bike Ride on your check. If anybody is still interested in riding, either one day or both days, let me know. We would be happy to have more riders. I think we have about 8 to 9 signed up so far, so it's actually a bigger group than we've had the last couple of years. So we're looking forward to it. One other note is we are looking for somebody to help provide lunch on Sunday. It's down in Wilberforce, Ohio, which is, I know, a good drive from here. But if you'd be interested in taking a road trip to the southern part of Ohio on Sunday and want to provide some lunch for some sweaty, hungry bicycle riders, let me know. I'm checking around, but that's one need that we're looking to fill right now. So thanks so much for your support.
Brandon, what are those dates again?
It's 2 weeks, the 16th and 17th, I believe. It's the weekend after the relief sale.
Okay, thanks. All right, so that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And so since we're talking bicycling and announcements in July, the all-church bicycle ride and bike walk picnic will be coming up on July 23rd. Just briefly, there will be no rain date for that as far as the bicycling goes, but that will be at the end of the Oyunguren's visit, and so we'll culminate with a church picnic on July 23rd. So yeah, a lot happening in July. So speaking of the Oyungurens, next Sunday, the Oceanguren or Oyunguren, however you choose to pronounce it, they're fine either way. They will be visiting us from Argentina. This is a missionary family that they are missionaries in Argentina, from Argentina, and our church has supported them, I don't know, maybe over 15 years. I don't know if anybody knows right off the top of their head. We've supported them for a long time, and this will be their second visit to us here in Ohio. So next Sunday, Sunday school will be combined here in the in the sanctuary. Jose will be our guest speaker during the worship service, and then we're going to show them our good hospitality by having a carry-in lunch next Sunday. So just to clarify maybe some confusion from last week, there will be no carry-in breakfast next Sunday, just a carry-in lunch. And if you would like to host the Oyengurens in your home for a meal or have something fun you would like to do with them while they're in the area, please contact Ken. He's not here this morning, but you can text him. They will be around next week at the relief sale, and then they're heading to Goshen for a few days. Then they'll be back again from July 17th through the 24th. So contact Ken if you want to find a closer knit way of communicating and mingling with them than just at a broader context like maybe the relief sale or the carry-in meal. So while there is no carry-in breakfast next Sunday, you'll notice in your bulletin that you can still come and enjoy breakfast here next week. That is thanks to some Central families who are providing breakfast items. They will appreciate your generous donation toward their Loaves and Fishes initiative, so there are details about that in the bulletin. Any other announcements? Okay, well, as always, be sure to check the info in the bulletin and the back of the bulletin for upcoming events. And like the Ohio Mennonite Relief Sale coming up Friday and Saturday, this morning we have Katie Miller here speaking on behalf of the relief sale. So we'll have her come up, and for the kids who are helping with My Coins Count this morning, you guys can head to the back to get ready for taking the offering. And then when Katie is done speaking, then you guys can come forward and we will hear the music of My Coins Count. I should mention that the dollar for dollar match for My Coins Count has been met. And if you were one of those participating in that match, your offering checks can just go in the mail, to my house? No. The checks can go in the offering, memoed as My Coins Count, and then that will cover the My Coins Count match. That's exciting. Okay, Katie.
Good morning. My name is Katie Miller, and I'm here today to share a bit about the upcoming Ohio Mennonite Relief Sale, and more specifically, the quilt auction. I wanted to start by thanking you for the opportunity to share this morning and for your continued support of both the Relief Sale and MCC over the years. The 58th Ohio Mennonite Relief Sale will be held this coming Friday and Saturday at the Mount Hope Event Center. If you're thinking, isn't the sale usually in August? And hasn't it been in Worcester the past few years? The answer to both of those questions is yes. It is both a new date and a new location for the sale this year, but the sale itself will remain familiar. There will still be the auction, the food, the fellowship, and the reason for the sale. I find it's helpful for me when I'm listening to someone talk about something to have a little bit of a background of that person and how they've been involved and why they care about what they're speaking. So here's a bit about me and my history with the relief sale. I'm pretty sure that the first year I remember helping with the sale was in 2005, and which means, if I'm counting correctly, means this sale is the 19th sale that I've been helping with. That first year, I remember my sister and I spending hours standing on the tops of ladders, stretching quilts between the two of us for photographs to be pictured. In fact, the running joke between the two of us that summer was that we were finger models because our fingertips were all that were left on the pictures once the rest of us got cropped out, once they were posted online. And in other years, not to brag at all about what I've done, but to show the variety of opportunities you have, I've helped my youth group sell lemonade. I sold items in what's now called Artisans Market. I sorted used books, looking for myself the ones that I wanted to set aside to buy once they were finally for sale. helped in the Swiss pantry. There was one year the youth group helped roll egg rolls, helped park cars, collected change for My Coins Count. But where I found most of my joy related to the relief sale is helping with the quilts. There's a couple of things that I really like. One, it's the feeling of anticipation each year leading up to our first work day. What are we going to get this year? Unfolding that first quilt and seeing the pattern, the colors, the workmanship, thinking about all of the work and the effort that went into making that quilt. There's something about just being with the rest of the committee. I say I've helped with the sale for 19 years, and I am by far one of the least tenured people on the committee. So they talk about, back when the sale was in at Kidron and their kids camped out on stage the night before the sale. And we think about quilts we've had in the past that have either done well or they've really, really surprised us, or stories that we know are tied to the quilts. We get to know the donors, we get to know the buyers, what they're doing with the quilts, why they're choosing to support MCC in this way. I also love this week before the release sale, seeing everybody come together. The countless volunteer hours, time, and effort it takes to make the event happen. It's overwhelming if you think about it, so you just focus on your own little piece and trust that the rest is gonna happen. But to see that all come together. And then ultimately the donors, the buyers, the backup bidders, the attendees, the people who come to eat food, the people who come to see friends, the people who come to talk to one another, all to fundraise to support the work of MCC. It all builds to what is my favorite weekend of the whole summer, and I'm not just saying that because I'm here talking about it. I've actually told that to multiple people for many years. This year in the quilt auction, we have 100 large quilts, small quilts, and comforters available, being sold through the live auction that is also available online if you're not able to make it in person. And those items are coming from 43 different donors. Those are local churches who have supported the sales for years. They're individuals who are tied to local Mennonite churches, who have, again, supported the sale for years in various ways. And we have a growing number of donors who are not connected to the Mennonite church at all, who have heard about what we're doing and the work that MCC has done, and they want to support in whatever way that they can. So seeing all those donors come together. There are 2 items coming from this church specifically. So if you're coming to the auction, you want to watch for items number 1211 and 1223, and maybe bid those ones a little higher. Some more details about the sale. The schedule's online, but if you hear something that's maybe of interest that you didn't know about, here's some more details. Friday evening, July 7th, the event will run from 4 to 8 p.m. Some items of interest include silent auction stands being open, food stands, which is one of my favorite parts of the entire sale, figuring out what food I'm going to eat for what meal. The Artisans Market will be open, as will Quilter's Corner. You'll be able to preview all the auction items, and there will be children's activities. There will be a musical performance by John Schmid, and there is a volleyball tournament starting later in the evening. Last year, it happened, but it was out in the grandstand, the grass of the grandstand at the fairgrounds. This year, they are moving it inside, so you can sit and eat your food while you watch them play volleyball without having to trek halfway across the fairgrounds. And then Saturday morning is when I think the real fun begins. The event runs from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., starting with breakfast at 7. There's a kids fun run and 5K walk or run that I think starts at 7:30 or 8. Everything from the night before opens back up, and the live and online auction starts at 9, and there's a children's auction at 10:30. So there's literally something for everyone. Last year, the relief sale sent $400,000 to MCC following the conclusion of the sale. We don't know what this year will bring, but we're hopeful that it brings something comparable. I'll share some more things that I love about the sale. As I'm reading this, I said one of the things I love. I've already shared a lot of things that I love about the sale. So another thing that I love is that everyone's encouraged to participate. You don't have to buy a quilt or one of the large ticket auction items. We're collecting My Coins Count right now. Literally, the way that I have experienced a relief sale, your coins count, your penny counts. That gift of a penny feels just as celebrated as the purchase of a quilt. or the donation of a quilt. And you don't have to be an adult to help. Last year, again, one of my favorite things, at one point we had 3 generations of women standing on the stage selling quilts together. I was encouraged to get involved when I was young, and that's part of why I'm still involved today. The sale literally doesn't work if not everyone is involved. If you exclude the volunteers, people show up to chaos. If you exclude the donors, there's nothing to buy or to eat. Exclude the attendees, and it's all coordinated and ready for purchase, but there's no one there. And that's why no matter who you are or what you choose to participate in, you're supporting the work of MCC as they work to bring peace and justice in the name of Christ around the world. And that's how you, by eating an egg roll, making a quilt, or buying something at the children's auction, can support a refugee. You can help to drill a well, or you can bring about the hard work of reconciliation in a community. Thanks again for inviting me to share this morning, and I look forward to seeing many of you at the sale next weekend in Mount Hope. If you have any questions for me, I will be here after the service, and I obviously love to talk about the relief sale. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully you had a chance to get coins out of your pockets and your wallets. Here come the kids. We'll just listen to the music of My Coins Count. Dollars work too, but they don't make as much noise. All right, guys, thanks. Get them involved when they're young, and they will develop a love for being part of what happens with the relief sale and all of the good things that come from the financial donations to help people around the world. Thanks, kids. So for our call to worship this morning, I'll be honest and say I'm happy and sad that we can't be outside. But I get it. I don't really like the idea of being wet. The poor air quality has been kind of a weird challenge this past month. But for those of us who really feel the presence of God when worshiping outdoors, let's just try to imagine the breeze blowing, the chirping of birds this morning. And before the service, we talked about the importance of being present where we are at this moment. So I'd just like you to breathe in deeply and exhale slowly and just be present. For those of you who are pleased that we're indoors in our traditional setting where things are familiar and you know what to expect, breathe in deeply and just exhale slowly. If you're one of those who likes to doodle or color during the service, just breathe in deeply and exhale slowly. Maybe God comes alive to you when you study and memorize His Word. Just breathe in deeply and exhale slowly. Maybe you worship God best while you're standing up for righteousness or supporting just causes, or maybe when you're caring for others in volunteer ways. Just breathe in deeply and exhale slowly. We all come together in this space with all different ways that we worship God, with all our joys and our burdens, to declare that we trust Him and to praise Him for His steadfastness and faithfulness. Oh, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into His presence with thanksgiving, and let us make a joyful noise to Him with songs of praise, from Psalm 95. So you can turn to the insert in your bulletin, or you can turn to your worship book to page 26, and Jess will lead us in our singing.
I'd invite you to stand if you're able. We're going to sing 3 songs right in a row here. We were planning to be outdoors and planning to have you all gather in so we could sing together and hear each other. And now we're indoors, and so we'll do that anyway. But if you desire to move closer to someone so you can hear better, that's great. Sing out these songs, and we'll just go right through. So 26 in your blue worship hymnal or in your...
Your
to turn over to 343, My Hope is Built on Nothing Less. And we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and 5. And when this song is over, before you're seated, or if you're already seated, that's fine, you can get up. We just invite you to go around and greet a couple of your neighbors around you. I know we've done some talking in the lobby there, but just say good morning to a couple of people around you before you find your seats. 1, 2, 3, and 5, 343.
That would have lent itself perfectly for the outdoor service, but I think it worked okay this morning too. Thanks to Jess for stepping in and leading our singing this morning. And just you don't really want to plan two services when you have an outdoor service. So I guess we just bring it in and it works. And so our scripture this morning is from the book of Esther, just a few short verses, and I think, of course, Glenn will expound on that as he goes along, but our scripture, Esther 4, verses 12 through 14. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this."
Grace and peace to each of you from God our Father, Jesus Christ our Lord. Welcome to the visitors we have among us today, and also blessings to everyone that is absent or traveling or viewing live or later. I also want to say thank you to Jess for leading our songs this morning. Worship committee, worship ministry, Jess specifically was contacting a number of people for leading singing. Martha was working this weekend. Pam and I both had the same idea as she was going through a number of people. What about Jess leading? And summer schedule is challenging, finding people to fill in different schedules. With Martha working this weekend, Winfred is watching Anna preach this morning at another church. I also want to share, if you haven't heard, that Anna Ressler candidated at a church and receiving strong affirmation has received a call and has accepted a position at Hebron Mennonite Church in Hagerstown, Maryland. So she'll be starting September 1st, and she's excited about sharing more about that when she comes to preach later this month on the 23rd. But we can congratulate Anna in her new position. I also wanted to share that Kevin Himes, the pastor at Sonnenberg Mennonite, is on sabbatical, and what did I say? Oh, that's where I'm pastoring, that's right. Thank you. They're not far away. Yes, thank you. Kevin pastoring at Salem, I almost said it again, on sabbatical. He's planning to visit a number of churches this summer, but wanted to choose one place where he was going to come more regularly and will likely be coming here. So look forward to welcoming Kevin and his family if they attend with him. His wife is Jen. I think they have a son named Isaac, if that's correct, and 3 daughters. I'm going to try to help you remember their names if I can remember their names. Miriam, Hannah, and Naomi. So welcome them if they show up a number of times the next few months. I want to thank Nate last week for bringing a fantastic message regarding Hagar, and also Ora for leading worship and having Hannah and Lily help lead Scripture, and appreciate having them back again this Sunday, and Ora and Marilyn, a number of your family. We want to remember Priscilla Spiker as she represents Sonnenberg at Menocon this week. Looking forward to the relief sale this weekend. Thank you, Katie, for sharing your enthusiasm. I also share your passion and enthusiasm for the relief sale. Our family is going on vacation, and we chose to wait till after the relief sale to go. And I just appreciate another human who shares my affinity for relief sale culture. The many aspects of the relief sale that I also share. Everyone coming together. For many reasons, and look forward to that. The Ocean Gurns also coming this week and being around this weekend. So I will be here next Sunday on the 9th, and then following that, our family will be on vacation for 2 weeks, traveling out west. And Rachel Troyer and Mariah Steffen will be sharing the message of their mission and service trips on the 16th, and Anna Ressler will be bringing the message on the 23rd. And I will be back in the office the 24th. It'll be really hard for me to stay away from that carry-in meal on the 23rd, so I might be back for that anyways, because I just can't not be a part of something like that. So this next week, I will be doing some extra visitation. If anyone would like a visit or a contact, please reach out to me, and I'd love to connect with you. As Virgin pointed out, 2023, July is here, and so 2023 is over half over. Can anyone remember what we were doing 1 year ago today? Some of us were doing. Have a couple pictures? We moved to Kidron 1 year ago today. We are unpacking July 2nd. It has been a great year. A few pictures of our moving in time. It has been a good 10 months that we have been here at the church, and we want to say thank you to all and give thanks to God for this time and this marking of His faithfulness and leading in our lives. For this summer sermon series, I had reached out to all of you and asked what would be some things you would like to hear messages on. And I appreciated the feedback and came up with 3 things. Our faith practices, what we believe and how we live that out. Women of the Bible, God's story of faithfulness and prominence. And letters of Paul, which we'll hear more from coming later this summer. How familiar are you with the story of Esther? The book of Esther is the last of the historical books of the Old Testament. There are the first 5 books of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and then there are these 12 historical books, followed by 5 books of poetry of Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Solomon. But with these 12 historical books, it begins with the first, with Joshua, and goes through Kings, is the first half of this. There's actually 7 books there. The second part of these 12 historical books is comprised of Chronicles through Esther. And these relate important events throughout Israel's history during exilic and post-exilic times, including the restoration from captivity from Babylon. The story of Esther takes place after the Jews would have been allowed to return to Israel, but not all of the Jews returned. Obviously, many remained in Susa, the capital city of what is now called the Persian Empire. Xerxes is king. Darius, his father, would have been the king when Daniel, the story of Daniel, during the time of captivity. And in the book of Esther, there are 10 banquets. There are 3 pairs of banquets, beginning, the middle, and the ending of the story that are particularly prominent. 2 banquets at the beginning, one by Xerxes and one by Vashti, 2 prepared by Esther in the middle, and then there is this double celebration of Purim at the end. So the story begins with the deposition of Vashti, Queen Vashti. There are these grand banquets held by Xerxes and Vashti, and Xerxes, in high spirits, commands for Vashti to be brought before him and the people and his nobles, wearing her noble crown. We don't know if there is anything else she's allowed to wear, but she is to be wearing that to display her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. And she refuses to come. We aren't told why, just that she refuses to come. But Xerxes is furious. It seems like exploitation. She is then not allowed to ever enter into the presence of King Xerxes again. And an added note here, according to the Greek historians, during the reign of Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes, she comes back into power as the queen mother. So she doesn't get too far off and outlives her son. Duplications are prominent in the writing of Esther. For some reason, the writer loved to have two of so many things. In addition to the three groups of banquets that come in pairs, there are two lists of king's servants in chapter 1, verses 10 and 14. Two reports that Esther concealed her identity, 2, 10 and 20. Two gatherings of women in 2, verses 8 and 19. Two fasts in 4, 3 and 16. Two consultations of Haman with his wife and friends. Two unscheduled appearances of Esther before the king. Two investitures for Mordecai, or being royally robed. Two coverings of Haman's face. Two royal edicts. Two references to the subsiding of the king's anger. Two references to the irrevocability of the Persian laws. 2 days for the Jews to take vengeance, and 2 letters instituting the commemoration of Purim. Esther is a woman assigned a mission. She did not ask for this. So many things happened to her that were out of her power or control. Esther was orphaned from her parents, raised by cousin Mordecai. We just know that her parents died. We are later given her father's name, but that's all it's mentioned. Mordecai took her in and raised her. Esther was taken by the king, forced into his harem, sexually exploited. After Vashti was deposed, they scoured the kingdom for beautiful young virgins for the king, who were brought into his harem in Susa and put under the care of the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the women. And they were given beauty treatments, trained how to please the king. How do you think they were trained to please the king? What a ridiculously shallow selection process for queen. Not based on virtue or character or ability or experience or intellect, just got to be a beautiful young virgin. And it says that Esther had a lovely figure and was beautiful. She was whisked away. Was this traumatic? What was this experience like for this young girl? How old was she? I remember the VeggieTales version where it was being portrayed kind of like a kidnapping. It was like a drive-by, and the French peas just nabbed her and took her away, how I remember it. But Esther was instructed by Mordecai not to reveal her ethnicity as a Jew, the people that she belonged to. Now we have this whole debacle with Haman and Mordecai, but just before this, there is this exciting story where Mordecai discovers this plot of an assassination to the king. There were these 2 men at the king's gate that were devising this plan to assassinate the king, and Mordecai was stationed at the gate, overheard it, reported it to Esther, and Esther relayed it to the king, and it was discovered, and Mordecai gets credit for this, and it's recorded in the king's records. That's all we hear about it. And then we have Haman being raised up to this great position of grand vizier to the king, and the king even commands that all the noble officials kneel down and pay him honor. But Mordecai refuses, and the other officials ask why he refuses to kneel down to honor Haman, but we hear no reason why. But he had told them that he was a Jew. Well, Haman is furious and devises this plot not only to just kill Mordecai, but to destroy all his people, the Jews, along with him. He even gets the king to sign a decree that all Jews will be destroyed on a certain day in a certain month, which is 11 months away. It's a long time to think about your demise. The decree goes out into all the kingdom and is also decreed there in the citadel city of Susa. The plot continues. Mordecai and Haman, it gets more heated. Haman is just furious with Mordecai and plans specifically how to kill Mordecai. But Mordecai and all the Jews with him are distraught because their doom has been declared. Now I'd like to read chapter 4. If you want to follow along or just listen, it's the center, the heart of the story. Mordecai persuades Esther to help. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. Then Esther summoned Hathach, one of the king's eunuchs assigned to attend her, and ordered him to find out what was troubling Mordecai and why. So Hathach went out to Mordecai in the open square of the city in front of the king's gate. Mordecai told him everything that had happened to him, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. He also gave him a copy of the text of the edict for their annihilation, which had been published in Susa, to show to Esther and explain it to her. And he told him to instruct her to go into the king's presence to beg for mercy and plead with him for her people. Hathach went back and reported to Esther what Mordecai had said. Then she instructed him to say to Mordecai, "All the king's officials and the people of the royal provinces know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the gold scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king." 30 days seems like a long time for the king to not have the queen come into his presence. What was the deal there? Had she fallen out of favor? Had the king lost interest in his queen, Esther? But for 30 days, she hadn't been in his presence. It was going to be a big deal for her to go unsummoned into the king's presence. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer: "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai: "Go, gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day." How long can you go without drinking? 3 days or nights. They might be close to the point of death if they don't drink for 3 days. "I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." So Mordecai went away and carried out all of Esther's instructions. Deliverance will come from another place? Where? Fast? What is that practice? What is missing in this entire story? Did you know that the book of Esther is the only book in the entire Bible that never mentions God once? What is the deal with that? Now, some argue that this is done quite intentionally, for the very reason that it is implied that God is working in and through every detail of the story. Deliverance will come from another place? place was also something that could have been substituted for the name of God. They wouldn't say the name Yahweh. They would refer to Hashem, or the name. But place was also another substitute for God. You look at the Exodus story of God preserving the Israelites, and there are many noteworthy, miraculous acts of God. In Joseph, there are at least dreams and visions that play out predictions. And Joseph even gives credit to God. What his brothers intended for evil, God had ordained for good, deliverance and salvation of his people. Esther, like Joseph, were both Israelites, risen to power of position in foreign royal palaces. But in Esther, there is no overt miracle or oracle. But how do you explain the perfect timing and some of the details in this story? The providence of the night when the king could not sleep, that he ordered the book of the kings to be read, the king's records, to be read to him. And when it was read to him that Mordecai was the one that discovered the plot of his assassination, he asked, was Mordecai ever awarded anything, recognition for this, the saving of my life? And they said no. So he asked, well, who's out in the court right now? And at that moment, coming in was none other than Haman, to specifically ask the king what he could do, telling the king how he wanted to impale Mordecai on the pole set up in his yard. But the king asked for him to be brought in first and asked Haman, ironically, what should be done for the man that I want to honor? Well, Haman thinks, who's he going to honor more than me? Spells out this elaborate plan, and the king says, go do this for none other than Mordecai. The timing of that record being read to him because he couldn't sleep that night, coincidence? I think not. So there is this great reversal. Now, when Esther went before the king, she was pardoned, and she asked to have the king and Haman come to 2 banquets. And at the second one, she reveals that she is a Jew and the plot that vile Haman was planning against her and her people. Esther had made these decisions. Esther gave the instructions for Mordecai and all the Jews to fast. Esther, she was brave. She took her life into her own hands and went before the king. Her life was spared, but then she also came up with this 2 banquet idea, bringing Haman in, who thinks, oh, look at me, I'm being honored, only to have this reversal at her second banquet that he was not being honored. There is this structure of reversals in the book of Esther. There are 10 things that happen where Haman plots one thing in the destruction of the Jews, but then what actually comes to fruition through and for Mordecai, thanks to Esther's decisions and bravery. There's 10 things here. The king gives Haman his ring at the beginning in chapter 3. Then the king gives Mordecai the same ring. Haman summons the king's secretaries. Mordecai summons the king's secretaries. Letters were written, sealed with a ring. Letters written, sealed with the same ring. The Jews, even women and children, are to be killed on one day, but later in chapter 8, at the end of the story, in self-defense, the Jews can kill their enemies in one day. They end up taking 2. Haman's decree publicly displayed as law. Mordecai's decree publicly displayed as law. Couriers go out in haste. Couriers go out in haste. The city of Susa is bewildered. Then the city of Susa rejoices. Mordecai wears sackcloth and ashes. Mordecai wears royal robes. Mordecai goes through the city wailing loudly. Mordecai led through the city in honor. Zeresh advises Mordecai's death, and then Zeresh predicts Haman's ruin. 10 great reversals. We have here in chapter 4, the center of the story. It's the only chapter where there isn't feasting, but there's fasting. For such a time as this, How many of you remember what the commencement speaker spoke at your graduation? Choose your graduation. I remember this was the text at my seminary graduation, for such a time as this. Now, I don't believe this is just for me. I believe this message this morning is for all of us. I mentioned that in verse 14 from another place was the closest reference to God. And Mordecai never said that he would kneel, why he would not kneel down and pay homage to Haman. But in Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would not bow down or worship anyone or anything but God alone. And they said that God would save them. They also said that even if he wouldn't save them, that they would still not bow. But God provided a mighty miracle in preserving them, even sending an angel into the fiery furnace. They came out and they didn't even smell like smoke. Fasting. What was this practice of fasting? It didn't say that they were praying, because that would have been giving attention that it was praying to God. But what were they fasting? What's this practice? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I'm wondering, how often do we fast on any kind of a regular basis? What do we fast for? What things are big enough deals that leads you to fasting? I have a couple friends that have done extended times. And this isn't something that we talk about or are supposed to make mention of, or, you're not supposed to let people know when you're fasting. It's not a prideful thing. But I'm wondering what we are called to fast for. What are we facing? Similar to Esther and the Jews, where our lives may be at stake. As a church, as a people, we may not be facing an actual physical slaughter or annihilation by sword, but what is battling for our very hearts, minds, and souls? The devil has all his schemes and fiery darts directed at our hearts. What are we being distracted by? Our phones, social media? I heard someone say yesterday that they refer to Facebook as the Antichrist. Endless scrolling, screens. Name for yourself your own voices of distraction. Vices and distractions. What are we being disillusioned by? What voices are tainting our perspective of the world or our faith? Where and how are we showing or keeping our devotedness to the Lord? What do we need to fast for? There are so many battles being fought right now in our world and society right before our eyes. So many battles surrounding sexuality, gender identity, and marriage. The sanctity of life, war, injustice, poverty, racial inequity, women's suppression and exploitation. For such a time as this, what is God calling you to stand up and say because you know it is right and needs to be said? Are you willing to put your position, your status, and reputation on the line, even your very life? The end of the story works out quite well for Esther and her people. Not only are they not annihilated, but they actually completely get to annihilate their enemies. Not a very, very good illustration for our tradition of Anabaptist pacifism. But today, our enemies are not the people who oppose our opinion and perspectives. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the powers of the evil one, the principalities of darkness, of anything opposing the truth of the Word of God and His good news of Jesus Christ. What is calling you to greater relationship with Jesus? There you will find freedom and salvation. There you will find fullness of joy of life. That is the place where deliverance will come. Do you see miracles Or do you see God working in every detail of your story? What do we need to fast for? When Lisa comes up after our next song and asks for sharing of testimony time, I'm not inviting you to have this as a time of a platform for any political perspective or opinion, but a personal testimony of where you see yourself or us being drawn closer to Jesus.